I guess I was a classic middle child. I not only was I a middle child, not only did I have middle child syndrome, I had a twin, and we were both in the middle. And my twin is a girl, right? So she's the first girl, so she has that privilege. So she doesn't suffer from the middle child syndrome that I do. So I am the middle child in the family. So you have the firstborn, you have the twins, me and my sister, and the lastborn. And if you know anything, I don't know if you're a middle child.
No, man, I'm the first.
Oh, okay. So you see, you don't have our problems. If you ask many middle children, they'll tell you the parents, all the parents' energy was spent on the first.
Yeah.
And it's habitual. Like even as they grow up, that energy is spent on the first, right? And then a lot of the softness is expanded on the lastborn, right? The middle child usually sort of just gets the remnants. And that's why I have a huge middle child syndrome. And as a middle child, you sort of strive to sort of prove yourself every day. You know, you have to like prove like I am capable of doing this by myself, and you rebel a lot.
My favorite guests to talk to on this show have two things in common. One, they are really, really good at one thing or good at many things. And two, they have a chip on their shoulder, as in they are driven to prove something to someone or themselves. My next guest is brimming with both. Obinna Ofor is a businessman with his fingers in so many different pots, but he's most popularly known as being part of the Zodara group. In fact, he recently opened The Gatsby by Zodara, where we recorded this episode. You should visit. It's a very different spin to the fine dining experience. Anyway, Obinna is a businessman, and on getting to know him, I found that he's really good at so many other seemingly disparate things, and so I had to hear his story. And by the time we peeled back the layers of his life, we found out what motivated this man to be the frugal, shrewd businessman that he is. Being the classic middle child. That aside, if you're a business owner or considering starting one, listen closely. Obinna knows things. My name is Rodney Omokache, and you're welcome to The Young God. Quick backstory. This will be our second time meeting up like this for a recorded podcast conversation. In fact, I'm recording this in the midst of preparing for the Young God experience coming up in a couple of days, 1 week exactly. And what happened was, after our first recording, after sitting on that thing for 2-3 months, it was a fantastic, varied. We talked about, women, life, work, your book. We talked about African narratives. I was a bit careless with the files, and I lost them. In fact, I lost them the morning before it was to drop.
Yeah.
So that was heartbreaking, but I just have to have your voice and your story on this platform. And so we scheduled another one. This time we're doing it, and maybe it's for good, because last time we recorded in your office. Now we're recording in your spot, your space, your own.
The Gatsby.
The Gatsby at Zodara.
And Zodara. The Gatsby by Zodara.
The Gatsby by Zodara. That's good. Yeah. If you're familiar with some of the things we talk about on the podcast, there's something called the Multihyphenate. And the Multihyphenate is basically someone that has a lot of different skills, at least 3 and above, and finds a way to not, to make each one inform the other. So they're not disparate, like, I do this on the side. So it's not a side hustle, it's not it's a hobby. Like, you find a way to take all the skills you've learned over time, and then one way or the other, it informs, the business, it informs, the way you think about the business even. So all these different things, even affects your involvement, your hands-on nature in the business. You're multi-hyphenate, which means you do a lot of different things really, really well, and you find a way to combine them. So tell me, what is it that what are the things, what are your hats? In fact, you're wearing a hat right now. So let's imagine, what are your many hats that you put on and off?
I am a small business developer or an investor, whichever one suits. So if it's a business I'm not really interested in, but I like, I'm interested in the person behind it, I would invest. So I invest. If it's a business I'm really interested in, I get involved. That I'm a small business developer. I'm also a writer.
No, you're an author. You're an author.
I'm an author.
Yes.
I'm an author.
Hold on, because I know you're gonna miss the detail. He's not just an author. He's an author of a fantasy and Afro. What is the way you put it?
Afrocentric
fantasy novel.
Yeah.
Please carry on.
So I'm an author. I am I cook.
What about real estate?
Oh yeah, that's my main business,
Yeah.
and I'm into real estate. We have over 200 properties in Abuja and counting. And
So Obinna, how did this place come to be? What's the vibe you're going for? What's the aesthetic?
Well, the Gatsby is, first of all, we didn't know what to do with upstairs. I think the Zodara crowd loved outside. In fact, getting them to go downstairs was a struggle. Not to mention getting them to go upstairs. So I think we figured the only way to get people to come up here is to have a completely different vibe that doesn't even compete with downstairs at all. And of course, the question is, what do people really want? What is different, authentically so? And I thought, what if we give somewhat of a fine dining experience where people can actually take dates on, to have their business meetings in a very laid back environment. It's easy to book out the place. You can have family gatherings. And then the thought of the Gatsby came in, and we at the Gatsby were not pressured with menus or, many people will call me and say, hey, what's on your menu? And what we are focused more on is giving you the best experience. So you come with your dates, the chef tells you what's on the menu for that day, and gives you, the best service they can give you for that day. So that's the Gatsby. We're nervous about it, but now, as I'm sure you know, it's doing quite well now.
Yeah, it's been running.
Yeah.
I've been to a couple of dinners here. I know what the vibe is, and it's definitely a space that when you get into it, you can tell it's different from the rest of the Zodara vibe.
Yeah.
Which was my initial, as a branding person, someone who does these things. I was wondering to myself, how would it work to have, Zodara, the brand entirely is, easy, chilling,
laid back, no pressure.
Yeah, lounging, very, very, it's for loud entertainment a lot of times, Then you have the Gatsby, which is upstairs, which is, its own little, an oasis within the desert of Zodara, if that makes sense. And I was wondering, how would, these two unique selling propositions meet at this space? But I guess what's really interesting about marketing and branding is that sometimes that contradiction can work to one's benefit if it's done properly.
Yeah, and I think there wouldn't have been a Gatsby without Zodara. It would have been a tougher sell. So what you have downstairs is you have people coming. Zodara is a bit loud, right? It's louder than the Gatsby. And sometimes people just want to just come upstairs. They want to, in the midst of the loudness of Zodara, they just want to come upstairs with someone and have a conversation and have a romantic moment with them. And we're very open, so people can actually walk into the kitchen. They can sit at the balcony. They can talk to the chef. They can watch the chef as she cooks. And it's really different. It's not like if you come to the Gatsby, you feel like family. And it's authentic. It's not like we're pretending to be your family. We are. Like, you have walked in the kitchen several times.
Yeah.
And, so that's something that people really appreciate. People can dine in the kitchen while the chef cooks. So it's. I don't think if the Gatsby was on top of Zodara, it would have worked. Or I mean, it might have worked, but it would have been a tougher sell. Yeah. So people want to sort of just step out of Zodara. And I also don't think if the Gatsby was on top of, say, a nightclub, I don't think it would have worked as well.
Yeah.
The reason the Gatsby is perfectly positioned is because of Zodara is already a laid-back setting. So you have people who appreciate laid-back settings. But at the same time, Zodara can be somewhat loud.
Yeah.
So you already have that market of people coming, seeking a more laid-back, chill, no-pressure setting. And the Gatsby amplifies that. Yeah, so it amplifies what Zodara is. It's like Zodara 2.0. So it works.
And I guess what's really cool, as I've noticed, is because of Zodara. Zodara already has its. If you're familiar with Zodara, you've been attending the event, you've come in to do all kinds of things here. The Gatsby is kind of like an extension of Zodara, so you can, in a sense, you feel like you don't have to go too far if you want a different experience, but within that same familiar, Zodara environment. You don't have to go, somewhere else where you have to now start to like build rapport all over again with, the establishment, with the chef or whatever. You know that this is a place where just right beneath you can have a more energetic vibe, and then upstairs by the same people who you've been in a relationship with forever. You can come upstairs and have a more subtle, more subdued, fine dining experience. Something else, you're in the kitchen yourself. You get in there and you.
Oh yeah. So in every business I open, my number one rule is I'm involved. I don't do big boy for my businesses. I am there. I am hands-on. I have to know much better than every single person under me. That goes with Sweet Roof. That goes with my consulting firm. That goes with the Gatsby. I have to know how to do the work. I have to know what the market prices are. I have to know how many pinches of salt goes into that soup. Right? So I have to know it better than anyone else. That way, when we are having a conversation, they can't bullshit me.
Yeah.
So like, I'm in the kitchen. I know when something is too long in the oven. I know when I know everything about it. And I don't know. I was having a conversation with someone the other day. Have you ever heard people talk about like Lebanese and how good they are with like small businesses?
Yeah.
And I was telling them, no, it's not that they are good with small businesses. It's that they don't. It's that Nigerians we tend to do big boy for our business. You find someone who says she's a baker, for example, and all of a sudden her luck comes through, and she opens up a bakery, and all of a sudden she's too big to bake. Right? She hires a baker. But you're a baker, but you hired a baker. And you don't bake anymore. And then you're wondering, how come this is that and that is this? And you see a crossover. You see someone who says he's a civil engineer. He starts an engineering firm. He stops being a civil engineer. He now wants to be an MD. And then you hire these Lebanese people. Now, what do Lebanese people do right? They are involved. The brother, say it's a bar. The brother is behind the bar. The cousin is in the kitchen. It's a family business. They have ownership, and that's why they ask for a lot of ownership when they're in there. And that's why people say these guys are good in business. They are good in business because they are really involved in the business. And I see a lot of young people who start businesses, and I can just tell, like you with this, with the young god, you are involved. you are walking around, you look at every single detail, right?
Yeah.
You're not hiring like people under you and saying, hey, you just run this, I'm too big for this business. And the moment you start doing that is the moment where, you start finding that things are going downwards and downwards and downwards. And it's simply because the person behind it, the person who has that vision, is not there. And I'll give you an example of something that happened about a week ago.
Okay.
My manager, the manager at the Gatsby, he was we had this problem with some of the facility. The generator wasn't coming in, and we're expecting a lot of guests to come in. And he did his job. He made all the calls he could call. He called our generator person, called the diesel suppliers, made all these calls. And the generator guy wasn't picking up. And he called, he tried, And I came in, this was like maybe 30 minutes before the guests started to arrive. And he tells me, I've been trying to reach this guy. I can't get a hold of him. I don't know what else to do. And I made a few calls, entered my car, drove it to a few places, and handled it, right? And I thought to myself, I was like, how come I could get it done and he couldn't? Right? And it was simple. As a manager, all you do really is you check boxes, right? You check that. A good manager's job is to check as many boxes as he can. He tried to. But somehow, as an owner, somebody who is really involved in that business, somehow you figure it out. Because it's either that or failure. So that's why businesses always sort of go down when the people who own that business are not personally involved in it. Things will keep going wrong because you have the vision and other people just tick boxes.
That is such a good way to put it, actually.
Yeah. And that takes me back to the conversation we were having about like why do I need to learn how to cook and all that kind of stuff. It's because like what happens if, for example, something happens to the chef?
Right.
Will the place shut down? I have to be good at everything because that is what a leader needs to do. You need to be very good, even if you shouldn't be bigger than what you're leading.
How dope has the show been so far? For real. If you're enjoying this podcast, do support by following on IG at The Young God Pod and Twitter at I Am The Young God for exclusive content and updates. Feel free to slide in my DMs and let me know what you're feeling, what your listening experience is like, and whatever else might be on your mind. I'm here for it. And by the way, do subscribe and tell a friend. You know what? Let's take it back. Let's give some context into who you are as a person. As someone who knows how to cook and is now running a restaurant business, not because that was your first instinct. Your first instinct was real estate, and then your second was writing. So I'm guessing that the third was, I can cook, I enjoy food, and now I'm starting a restaurant.
Yeah.
So where did this cooking thing, how did that enter into your skills library?
So I started cooking. I guess I started being interested in cooking back when I was like a young boy. But I never really got into it, right? I remember one time they were making like eggs and bread, and I thought it might be a good idea, and I was probably like maybe 12 at the time, and I thought it would be a good idea if I just whisk the eggs, pour it in the pan, and while it's still uncooked, just slap the bread in there. I didn't know what a French toast was at all. Like I just did it. And my mom told me, that's a French toast, right? I said, okay, that's it. I had no idea at 12 what a French toast was. And, time went on. I moved to the States for a while. And I started working like cleaning, the cafeteria. Then from there, moved up to the kitchens. From there, started working at fast food restaurants. I started seeing what they did, and I think it's a personality thing. I'm the kind of person who I look at something and just ask myself, how can it be better? And then you go home, or you go to Walmart at the time, you see some mince meat. You go home and try it out. You play around with it, and so on and so forth. And I was living by myself for a very long time, so I just kept perfecting it, and started cooking at some restaurants here and there.
But why were you cooking at restaurants?
Yeah, to sort of pay my way. Like your parents are paying your school fees, for example. The least you can do is not ask them for pocket money. Right? The least you can do is not to ask them all the time, hey, I need money for this, I need money for rent, I need money for that. The school I went to was really expensive at the time. So like, they bring out all that money, and I had a twin sister. I have a twin sister. God forbid. God, please delete that. I had a twin sister with me at school at the time. So we went to the same school, the University of Georgia. And, so the least I could do was pay my rent, pay for my phone bills, the internet, and then my parents just worried about paying my school fees. So that's how I survived for my school years. Then came back to Nigeria and started pursuing other things.
Man, thinking back to my own time in uni, I kind of feel bad now, low-key, because I depended on my parents for everything.
You're not alone now.
No, yeah, but I'm not alone. But I feel like if I was a bit more entrepreneurial at the time, right, I would have built that muscle. I think that's how you build the muscle.
Did you school in which country?
South Africa.
South Africa, okay.
So it was a place that if I had that kind of mindset, my mindset at the time was I was just really into my creative skills, really honing those. Business wasn't my thing, you know what I mean? Or, fending for myself. I felt my parents could do it, so why should I bother? But I feel like I can see how that experience informed everything you are now, right? And now thinking to myself, like, damn, if I had that same kind of thinking at the time, or if my parents had maybe forced my hand a little bit to become a bit, to, fend for myself in that way, I would be a dangerously badass businessman. Don't even play.
I guess I was a classic middle child. I not only was I a middle child, not only did I have middle child syndrome, I had a twin, and we were both in the middle. And my twin is a girl, right? So she's the first girl, so she has that privilege. So she doesn't suffer from the middle child syndrome that I do. So I am the middle child in the family. So you have the firstborn, you have the twins, me and my sister, and the lastborn. And if you know anything, I don't know if you're a middle child.
No, man, I'm the first.
Oh, okay. So you see, you don't have our problems. If you ask many middle children, they'll tell you all the parents' energy was spent on the first.
Yeah.
And it's habitual. Like even as they grow up, that energy is spent on the first, right? And then a lot of the softness is expanded on the lastborn, right? The middle child usually sort of just gets the remnants. And that's why I have a huge middle child syndrome. And as a middle child, you sort of strive to sort of prove yourself every day. You have to prove I am capable of doing this by myself, and you rebel a lot. So for example, if they don't buy me, say they do something for my older brother, and they give me his hand-me-downs, right? I would strive to sort of go and buy my own. So I'm always striving to prove myself. And I think that became part of me growing up. So in school, back then, I would work, right? I would not wait for them to like give me pocket money, and I had this natural distrust that if I wait, it wouldn't even be fair. Like they would give my sister much more than they would give me because of course she's a girl, and they would give my brother much more than they would give me because he's the first. And we, the kids, would always take care of the last born, so everything just trickles down to him, so he doesn't have to do anything. So I just had that thing, and if you look at, I think most middle children can relate to that. So I could either be entitled and complain and nag all the time, which at some point I was doing. I would like be calling some stuff out. And then I decided to just stop and start being like a beast.
A beast.
Yeah, so like my parents know me like Obinna would figure it out. You know, so
Wow.
yeah.
So that explains how you are the way you are.
Yeah.
That explains a lot of things.
I
now.
blame that solely on that.
Yeah. Blame?
No,
Or-
yeah, I blame who I am. Like, if people ask me why am I this aggressive, or why am I this intentional about stuff, or why do I have to always try to fix things, that is the reason. And like my mom, for example, is kind of like me in her, like she's a go-getter as well, and I'm sure that's the reason as well, right? She has classic middle child syndrome. You know, she's not the first girl. So the first girl is, in our family, soft. The first guy, soft. Right?
Yeah.
Because the first girl gets all the privilege of being the first girl. The first guy gets all the privilege of being the first guy. And then my mom comes along and she's a girl again. And, you know, no attention is being given and she's aggressive as shit. Right? She takes.
Yeah.
She would, if she wants something, she would get it.
Yeah.
And I think that got passed down to me very, very well. Yeah.
Interesting. Man, as the eldest child, I think the struggles are different for me in that there's that pressure, that inherent pressure of you're the eldest son to a popular and powerful Igbo man. You get that kind of thing, and so my own response to that was rebelling against having to fill his shoes.
You told me once you don't like going back east.
Yeah, I don't like going back east.
Why?
Because that's where the first son pressure really
kicks in.
Really kicks in. They you know, Diopala, you know, you have to do this, you have to, and that's just not my energy. Like I'm like the least like if you have the stereotypical first Igbo son, I'm like so far from it. Like it's always a surprise to people when I say I'm the eldest son because of how I do things. So when I was growing up, I rebelled.
In spite of the fact that you rebel, do you agree that as a first son, these are that the traditions and all that you should be the herald of all that, you should be in charge of all that?
Well, I agree, but not because I'm the first son. So I found my way into it like as a person, as family. This is family. This is important. So whether I'm first or not, I came to understand that these are things that should be, you know, taken care of. These are things that should be the forefront of my mind. But I had to make it so that I arrived that way at my own time, through my own means. But taking on that pressure, I think I'd have been a very different person if I decided, okay, you know what, because my father is this way, and because this was the expected of the first son, and I'll take on that, and then it would just become a whole other, you know. So the journey was very winding as opposed to linear. That as this for most, like I'll be compared to my dad's other friends' first sons, and how they're handling things. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm just not.
Yeah, just not.
I'm just not that guy.
Yeah.
You know.
Has he accepted that?
Oh yeah, he's accepted it.
Okay, that's good.
At the sword, he accepted it. You know. So, but it's taken a lot because it's just something that they couldn't wrap their head around. That, you know, this guy, no one to take the average kind of job. Imagine telling my dad I wanted to be a photographer. After being placed in the state house, the presidency for my NYC, after finishing, I was doing all that stuff. I was ready to be retained, and I'm telling him that, oh no, I just
You
wanna.
want to be a photographer.
That did not go down
If you
well.
were my son, what would I do to you?
Yeah, he was disappointed. He let me hear it. He let me, Igbo fathers, they don't play. So for a long time, our relationship was fractured. As a result of that, I was like the disappointment, the black sheep eldest son.
Do you think that's a very interesting thing you just said? Do you think, like, if for example you were like a billionaire photographer? Because I think about Igbo parents, right? If you were a billionaire photographer, they'll proudly go out and tell people, "Oh, my son is a photographer." If they are seeing what that is pulling in.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Oh,
they much rather say my son is a doctor and you're living averagely, right?
Yes.
Or, but if you are a photographer or even like a singer and you're raking in millions, they'll proudly tell, "Oh, my son is a photographer." Like I'm reminded of. I wonder if Chiamanda, because she was studying to be a doctor at Princeton.
Yeah.
Chimamanda.
Yeah.
And then she decided to write. And I wonder how I think she was writing while trying to be a doctor, and then it blew up. And then she could be like, "Hey, I don't really care to be a medical doctor." And Igbo parents tend to kind of accept that once they are seeing the results. They are very result oriented.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I could never fault them for that. I understood, where that wasn't from a bad place. I understood that, they had to keep up their own appearances. It's so complicated, but I believe that if I wanted to give myself a chance long term at, being happy, whatever that meant at the time, if I wanted to give myself a chance at fulfilling my purpose on earth and maybe even taking the family to a different sphere entirely, right? I had to do things my own way. I had to risk disappointing them in the moment, and then having them happy in the long term. That was my thinking about it, and so far so good, because I remember like maybe 2 or 3 years after that decision, when I would have my work on the cover of a magazine, or when I would shoot the cover of some influential person, or even when I was on the cover of a newspaper celebrating some things, my dad would take those clippings and he would keep it in his office. He would WhatsApp them to his friends. That kind of thing. So in that regard, like obviously when the results are there, when they can see what the kind of prestige that they can bring, they start coming around. But initially it was like, and what's really sad is that if I wasn't the kind of guy I was, or I am, in terms of handling the pressure of disappointing one's parents, that decision may have even been worse, because it's one thing to disappoint your parents, and it's another thing to not be able to handle that you disappointed them. Because they're still your parents, and you care about them and respect them very much. So you're carrying that weight and, deciding that, this is all gonna work out for good one way or the other. And, thankfully, we're not all the way there. Let's say 75%,
75 is good.
It's very good, yeah, very, very good. But it's been a journey of helping them, come around. So today, they can't say to their friends what I do.
Yeah.
They will ask them, the only thing now is, why isn't he married? Why isn't this, why isn't that? And that's the pressure that is also very, very difficult to, escape. But
I get that.
I'm built better than most in that regard. So
you are.
Yeah. And there you have it. Obinna, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me.
I promise you, this will not lost. This particular episode, we're backing it up as soon as we hit the record button. And man, Obinna,
thank you, Rodney.
This is the Young God. All right. This is the Young God.